appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Roll call.
Bernie Nevada.
Here.
Peter Osinski.
Here.
Dennis Sullivan.
Here.
Randall Brady.
Here.
Arthur Akins.
Here.
Jason Kreska.
Here.
Al Caresti.
Here.
Larry Cleveland.
Here.
Christopher Haddock.
Here.
Andrea Dare and Ken will not be present this evening.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Oh, we didn't get this one. Do it again. We have one resolution for Chun Chan, 313 East Main Street. So moved.
Second, there's couple little changes. We're just gonna change the date that the application was heard from May 11th to April 27th. And then we're just gonna put Deidre in as the signatory because she was filling in for Bernie that night. So with those changes.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay.
Okay, Peter Osinski.
Yes.
Dennis Sullivan.
Yes.
Randall Brady.
Yes.
Arthur Akins.
Yes.
Jason Kreska.
Yes.
Christopher Haddock.
Yes.
And
Okay. Our only land use application tonight is Taco Bell. So, you can set up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, good evening, everybody, Mr. Chairman, board members, board professionals. My name is Michael Silver, and I'm an attorney at the law firm D. Francesco Bateman, Hunter Davis, Lair, and Guam, PC, and I have the responsibility of presenting the applicant this evening. Venomous Somerville Real Estate Holdings, Inc., Taco Bell. This application is for amended site plan approval relating to the property located at block 95, lot 15, as designated on the tax map of the borough of Somerville, more commonly known as 956 Route 22. Property is located in the B5 Highway Business District. The applicant seeks amended site plan approval from the board to relocate the drive-through menu, order board, and speaker box from the southeast corner of the building to the southwest corner of the building. The applicant is also seeking to extend the hours of operation of the drive-through component of his restaurant. Currently, the applicant is permitted to operate the drive-through operation from 5 a.m. to midnight, and the applicant seeks to extend the hours of operation of the drive-through operation from midnight to 2:30 a.m. Lastly, the applicant proposes to install additional signage on the property, one on each public entrance, and to my knowledge, these signs are substantially similar to what was originally approved in the applicant's initial site plan approval dating back to a public meeting held on June 22nd, 2016 and memorialized in a meeting held on July 13th, 2016. Those proposed signs were not constructed, and following our 2016 approval, and Mr. Lever can provide some greater background, our applicant's engineer, on this. I would also just note that the Taco Bell insignia located on the drive-through canopy will remain the same, and that the applicant is simply proposing to relocate the canopy. However, the Taco Bell insignia is to remain the same. Presentation of this application will be made through two professionals, Mr. Mark Weaver, professional engineer and professional planner. He will be here to provide engineering testimony relative to proposed amended site plan. And Mr. Lever may be called upon later on the hearing to provide planning testimony relative to any variance relief required in conjunction with this application. In attendance this evening is Mr. Andrew Galari, a professional traffic operations engineer, and he will address any traffic concerns associated with the proposed relocation of the drive-through menu board and speaker box. Also in attendance is Mr. Nirav Mehta, principal shareholder of the applicant, and he's here to provide testimony regarding daily operating procedures of the Taco Bell, and also provide testimony regarding the extension of the hours of operation for the drive-through. We have Mr. Joseph Keefe. He's an expert and consultant in acoustics and sound, and he's in attendance this evening. While it's our position that direct noise testimony may not be necessary, as the applicant commits to complying with all applicable local and state noise regulations, Mr. Keefe is here to answer any questions that board members and board professionals may have. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask if I can introduce our first witness, our first expert, Mr. Lieber, have Mr. Lieber sworn, and allow Mr. Lieber a few moments to place on the record his educational and professional background.
Okay, great.
And just, if necessary, Mr. Lieber will probably, may be called again to give planning testimony as well, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to have Mr. Lieber sworn as both professional planner and engineer, or one now, or whatever's easier.
Let's do both now, and in fact, we can swear them all in.
Yeah,
All your
swear them
witnesses
in.
all at once.
Before we get started, let's just do some procedural issues. The board, all notices and publication proofs were properly received. So the board has jurisdiction to act tonight. We'll just pre-mark some exhibits. We'll mark as the application and supporting documentation is A1. The notice of publication is A2. The amended site plan dated June 8, 2021 is prepared by Eastport Engineering as A3. Mike's report dated January 31, 2022 is A4. Mike revised his report dated March 6, 2022, that will be A5. A6 will be the Ostergaard sound emissions report dated 3/31/22. And A7 will be the Stonefield Tech memorandum, and that's dated March 28, 2022.
Ms. Kaczynski, one thing, Mr. Cole's report dated March 6th, I think was meant to be dated April 6th. Just wanted to make note of that.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, appreciate that. Okay, so that's clarified, that's now dated April 6, 2022. And want to have all your witnesses come up, we'll swear everybody at once.
Thank you. Swear everybody in all at once, including Mike, and when you give your testimony, you just put your name on the record. You swear the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, lawyers?
Okay, so,
You looking for a tripod or something?
Yeah.
Behind the microphone of the board device there. Mark, you should set them up on the doors with the camera can see them.
thank you.
On this.
Yeah, somewhere
Yeah,
around that side.
Right where they enter there.
Good?
Spin it around. There you go. There.
So Mike, anything that we're gonna show tonight that wasn't part of that application package or the site plan package that we referenced, we'll just mark as an additional exhibit.
Okay.
Okay, so that, now, excuse me, that was part of the application package?
But it's colored.
It's short sheet too.
Okay, so we'll mark that as A8, and that will be drawing, so that is Eastway Engineering Site Plan Drawing Sheet 2, colorized, correct?
Yep.
And what's the date on that? Is it the same date?
Yes, it's dated June 18th of last week.
So, Mr. Lieber, can you provide the board with your educational professional background?
Sure. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree from Civil Engineering at Drexel University. Following school, I went back part-time at night, completed the MBA program at Rutgers Graduate School. I was licensed in 2004 as a professional engineer. In 2005, I was licensed as a planner. and in 2006 I was licensed as a certified municipal engineer. Since then I've been practicing both in the public sector and private sector doing projects similar to this one. And I was actually before this board for the original application about 6 years ago.
Thank you.
So we'll accept them in both fields of engineering and tech.
Thank you.
So, just a little housekeeping. This is, block 95, it's lot 15, it's 956 Route 22. It's about a half-acre lot in the B5 zone. It was formerly the Red Tower restaurant, if you remember. And we're here in 2016 for an approval to convert it to a Taco Bell with drive-through. The lot's an existing undersized lot in the zone. It needs a minimum of 1 acre. And the board also had granted relief as part of that application for minimum parking. We're slightly under the parking, between 21 spaces. There was a minimum distance for the separation between a drive-through and a residential zone district. Relief was granted for that. Lot coverage relief was granted, and then there were some waivers pertaining to shade trees and street trees and signage also. Now, I have some photos I want to pass out, which were taken this morning with the property. Just want to grab one and pass them down.
Okay, Mark, did you take these photos?
I did.
And you said you took them this morning?
Actually at lunchtime.
Great, and they accurately depict the property at that time?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll mark these as a 9, and these are the photographs that were taken, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 photographs on 4 sheets.
Alright, everybody have a copy? Alright, so on the first page, the first photo is the main entrance from the highway. We're looking at the front of the building and the side that faces McDonald's. Just beyond the property, there's a gas station. In the front of the building, you'll see a wall. There's an outdoor seating area behind that wall. The 2 primary entrances, if you look closely, there's like a horizontal white bar across the 2 doors. The next photo on the bottom, this is a view of the wall that faces McDonald's. You'll see the tables, the outdoor area in the front. If you look to the right of the photo, you'll notice the lane that goes behind the building to get to the drive-thru. On the next page, I'm at the gas station side of the building where the pickup window is. What you see here is the yellow artwork is the canopy where you would place your order. There's a little screen there. You'll see the menu board off to the right. The extreme right, you'll see a vehicle parked at the pickup window. Now the next photo I took to show you that the distance between the order station and the window is really only 1 car length. So what happens here is someone places their order at the screen, but they can't move up to pick up their order because there's someone waiting to pick up their order before them. So what happens is the line can't progress because the next person can't place an order.
Usually that's because the kitchen staff doesn't have enough time to prep the order inside, right?
Yes, normally in a drive-through situation, the distance between this ordering station and the pickup window is 80 feet. Right now this is about 30 feet. So the reason that they have 80 feet is that you pull in, you place your order, and then you could go into the next queue where people are waiting to pick up, so other people can place orders. It doesn't function that way at this restaurant because the 2 windows are just too close for the 2 stations. Why is it like that? Because when we were here for the original application, there was a proposal to place the ordering screen behind the building, which was facing the sound wall along the back property line. And we had a sound expert at that hearing. There was some testimony and there was questions from the board as to if there was any impact at all from people ordering at that station on the residents behind the property. And at the end of the evening, the board felt comfortable that if we had oriented that station on the radius, one angle toward the gas station, that would be a happy medium and we could live with that. unfortunately, in the last couple of years, it's not working out too well. In fact, this is one of the worst performing Taco Bells, at least that I've been involved in. I want to go to the next page. This is a picture. My back to the gas station, so you see the front of the building on the right, and then on the left you see someone picking up in the window. And on the bottom, you'll see a car turning the radius, the trash enclosures in the distance, and the sound walls on the right. Then on the last page, two photos. One is that sound wall which was constructed as part of the original approval. That's between our property and the houses on Ivanhoe. And then on the bottom, there's a bunch of these signs all around the property, pretty much everywhere. Just nicely notifying customers to keep noise to a minimum level. And to my knowledge, there's been no complaints or anything from the neighbors or anybody going in the bar saying that this use was perhaps too noisy or distracting. So really, the scope of what we're here for tonight is very limited. I'm going to go to exhibit A8. Just point out a couple things. So the property is outlined in red. You have 322 at the bottom. I outlined the existing building in blue. And in the rear left corner, you'll see the canopy for the ordering station and the actual menu board. So one of the things we're asking to do is to take this and relocate it to the other radius, almost like a mirror image of where it is now, to get a larger spacing between the placement of the order and the pickup window. If we were to move it to the opposite corner, then you're looking at about 110 feet from the screen where you order to the pickup window, which would really alleviate a lot of the congestion issue that occurs here, where people just can't physically get to order their food because it takes too long. And when you look at this plan, you have the McDonald's on the right here and the gas stations on the left. The other thing we're asking for is, if you recall back to the photo with the two horizontal white bars above those entrances, one entrance faces the highway, one entrance faces McDonald's. When the original application was filed, we wanted to put lettering above those doors to just say Taco Bell. There's no logo. And the manufacturer of those letters had prepared, specifications of, I think they were 8.4 square feet or 8.5 square feet. But by the time we got to construction and we filed permits for the sign, those letters weren't available anymore. Now they're 10 square feet. So the zoning permit for the signs was rejected because the letters were, I think, 1.5 square feet larger than was originally shown to this board. So what we had done is we put on this plan, the current manufactured letters in the top corner that we want to install. We just want to put them above the two entrances because right now there's no word Taco Bell anywhere on this building. The only thing that identifies it as a brand is the bell. So we've had some significant, hardship from the brand itself, the corporate office, because technically this building is not compliant with the brand because there's no letters that say Taco Bell. There was also a request a couple years ago to put another similar sign above the pickup window, but we're not interested in that. There was a variance requested to have a sign above, a window where there's no public entrance, but we're not interested in putting that sign up, so it's not part of the application. The two signs would be facing the highway and then facing McDonald's. Any questions on that?
Are you still requesting the larger sign rather than the original one that was approved?
Yeah, and I have the actual square footage right here. The original square footage was 8.5 square feet. And the way that's calculated is we just draw a rectangle around the entire word Taco Bell, and whatever that rectangle is 8.5 square feet. These signs are 9.95 square feet. I just rounded up to 10. And the discrepancy is because the sign went from 4.25 square feet in the actual lettering to 5.7 square feet. I mean, to me, that's hardly even noticeable. And really, somebody driving down the highway is going to say, well, that sign is, a square foot bigger than it should be. It's just a matter of the manufacturer doesn't make that sign anymore. And they service all the brands, across the country.
So is the proposed sign now at 10 square feet, is that compliant?
So it is. It's an interesting question because we've written a memo years ago to to Frank Rosso, basically summarizing when the permit application for the sign was denied, we wrote a letter stating that chapter 102-118F3A allows a wall sign for each entrance open to the public, with a maximum of 4 in total. And there's a limit on the size of those signs. It's 1 square foot per linear foot of the wall. So, in other words, if your wall's 50 feet long, you can have 50 square feet sign. So these walls are 67 feet, 44 feet, and the sign actually complies with what the ordinance permits. So let me just see here.
Mark, I don't think he does with the Taco Bell. With the bell
With the
itself.
bell,
With the
that's
bell. I think you're not counting the bell with a wall sign count.
So, Mr. Cole, so is the Taco Bell, because is it considered to be a projecting sign? Like as it projects from the building, it's on the, what I
If
call.
it's more than 8 inches, it's projected sign, but it's less than 8 inches, it's not.
And it's still considered to be part of the.
Part of it.
Bell.
Yeah, I mean, you guys got variance relief. This is the question, do you want additional variance relief because of the testimony of the signage?
Right.
Everything else is staying the same. You're saying that due to things outside of your control, the signage could not be made at those dimensions anymore. So it's just larger. That's what you're basically saying. Essentially, the board already granted this relief, and essentially we're talking about letters which are 6 inches taller. That's essentially what we're talking about here.
The original architectural plans that were provided to the board showed both of these Taco Bell letters on the 2 sides. Then,
Just slightly smaller, that's all it was.
yeah, when it got to manufacturing, they said we don't have that anymore.
There's only one manufacturer in the world that can provide a Taco Bell sign,
It's Everbright. They do a lot of brands.
so it just kind of one-stop shop for
It's a
signage.
quality control thing. If it comes from them, they know it's correct.
Gotcha.
So I have some questions I'll ask just referencing Mr. Cole's report. So, I spoke about the canopies when I first started with my introduction. Can you just touch on the canopies, whether whether it's the same canopy and it's just being relocated?
Yeah, if you go to a photo on E9, go to page 2. The top photo, you'll see a white canopy above the ordering station. That would just be moved with the ordering station to the other side. So it would just go with it.
So lighting is going to remain the same on the canopy as previously approved?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the digital display on the new ordering board. Is that any different than what currently exists at the site? And if it is different, can you just explain the differences to the board?
Hold that thought for 1 second. Mr. Farr, is the board the same? The ordering board is the same.
Actually, it's smaller in size, it's just the screen. Instead of the static board, instead of the static menu board right now we have with the inserts, it's going to be digital, so it keeps updating all the slides.
Okay, so what?
Why don't we just identify your name for the record?
Yeah, my name is Nirav Mehta. I'm one of the principal for the Pakistan.
Great. Can you just spell your name for the record?
Nira, A as America, V as Victor. And the last name is Mehta, M-E-H-T as Tom, A as America.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, so, the current board out there now it's fixed. So someone has to actually change the artwork inside. The newer screens, I guess in the last few years, the technology is now just really a big TV. You go to Starbucks, sometimes you don't even see the face of the person that you're talking to, but it just updates as you order. So when you order something, it prints on the bottom, what you order, and it shows a picture of it sometimes. But the screen that I'm looking at, I don't know that this was submitted, but it would be more of a digital screen, not the old fixed panels.
And it would be facing basically though the highway, right? Am I correct in
It's
assuming,
gonna
where would it be, like, where would it be facing, McDonald's, the highway? Because right now it's facing towards the back of the property, but
It's going to face at an angle toward the side wall.
so it still would be facing towards the back of the property.
I mean, no one coming through is going to see that.
No, I'm just thinking about the light glow from the sign to the property side, that's all.
So
I'm not a lighting expert, but I've heard other experts speak about this thing, and the demonstration usually gives, they hold a light bulb up and you see the light goes everywhere. But then if you hold up an iPad, it's not a good flashlight, it doesn't really illuminate well. Like the type of screen is just, it's almost like your phone, it just has enough backlight for you to read what's on it. It's not really a light source.
Mr. Leader, there's also a sound attenuating wall in the rear of the property, correct?
Yeah, that's in the photos as well.
Okay, so would you say that the proposed digital display is greater than the sound attenuating wall in height?
No,
So would you say that the sound attenuating wall should help reduce any light glare or any light concerns associated with the digital ordering board?
yes.
Okay, great. So let's shift gears and speak a little bit about the speaker box. Will the proposed speaker box that's being installed, is it the same as the current speaker box? Is the current speaker box being reused? Is it a new speaker box?
It's called automatic volume control. So it has a sensor inside that detects the background noise. And if it's extremely noisy outside because the main source of noise here is the highway, then it turns the volume up a little more so you can hear what the person's saying. But after hours, when things are quiet, it senses that the background noise is very low and it lowers the volume so that when the person talks through the thing, it's not overly loud, it's just enough for you to hear them. And that's similar to what's out there today. I mean, I can tell you just me personally being out there, and you'll hear from the sound expert later. When I was standing near the trash enclosure taking the photos of the two cars that one was ordering and one was picking up, just standing here, I couldn't hear what the attendant was saying from the speaker. And the only thing blocking me and the speaker was that car. So, I mean, the volume is relatively low, so I'm not concerned about that, especially given that we have a sound wall.
And I was wondering if you could explain to the board how you chose that location for the proposed, or the relocation of the speaker box on the menu board. Why did you choose that location versus another location?
We simply mirrored what was already approved from last time. It would be acceptable if the board wanted the ordering station 80 feet back, which is standard for this use, which would then face the sound wall. But because we already had a discussion about that a few years ago, I didn't want to submit a plan showing the exact thing that we'd already discussed. So I just literally mirrored what was already approved instead of, the speaker facing the gas station. Now it's more or less facing toward McDonald's.
And we can address this in traffic testimony, but if it's necessary, if the board has concerns about queuing, as the board will see, there's 4 parking spaces adjacent to the western facade of the building. Are there any creative solutions we have that could help alleviate any of those concerns if necessary?
Sure. A lot of this type of use, sometimes the last space or two they'll strike employee only. Now, when I was there today, I made sure to go inside and speak to the manager. I wanted to know how many people were on the shift today. And at lunchtime, there were 7 people there. Besides my car, there were 0 cars in the parking lot. So I spoke to some of the people who worked there. I said, do you mind if I ask you, how do you get to work? And in reality, a lot of the people that work here are either dropped off or they walk here. They live very close, they live in the borough. To me, that was surprising because I was the only car in the parking lot. The drive-through, people were coming in and going out and whatnot. But for 7 employees, 0 cars, which was part of the reason that we were granted the parking variance to begin with, because Taco Bell has a large share of their business as drive-through. And we indicated that it's possible that a lot of employees would be living, nearby.
And just to address a comment in Mr. Cole's report, it was brought to our attention that there were electrical conductors from a utility pole mounted, that electrical conductors from the utility pole mounted transformers are partially exposed near the ground. So the applicant will, of course, install PVC shielding to address the partially exposed.
I think if I'm clear on what you're saying, when you come into the site, there's a junction box in the island and had a plastic cover that's been cracked, so it has to be repaired.
Yeah, if you either come here or leave, and there's a, I think
It's either here or here.
right.
Yeah, it's a junction box.
So, Mr. Weaver, that's all I have for your engineering testimony. If the board would like to ask any questions of Mr. Weaver or professionals.
I just have a question. Moving the speaker back the 80 feet to the southwest corner, how is that going to work with the natural queuing that you're going to get with people backed up to the highway? We're already, at times, you're backed up to the highway. So minus 5 cars, now you're backed up to the highway and you're in front of McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts.
Thankfully for me, we have someone else to talk about the.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll get to that.
okay.
But
Oh, I do have a question about the sound. Will that sound compound with McDonald's sound? Because now you're moving the speaker closer to theirs. Their speaker is 50 feet away. Is that anything to determine?
So we might have an answer for that. We have a sound, some of the things, but the only other thing I wanted to talk about was, operationally, we are also asking to extend the hours, which we're gonna discuss in a few minutes. From a site planning perspective, our scope is very minimal. We just wanna put the 2 signs up and then leave this, ordering station, that's it.
Yeah, I'm sure the traffic engineer will address the queuing issue.
Yeah.
Because if you have queuing, some of the angled parking spaces along the western parking line are blocked, and of course the ADAs. So I looked at this application, to me, it was a queuing potential in the Route 22 that I was a concern of. And then the sound, what Mark is doing is exactly what the board approved before, but the speaker box is 7 or 8 feet closer to the wall. So it's moving 7 or 8 feet, so I'm sure the acoustic engineer will address that. I had some concerns with that because of some of the testimony, some of the data said he just met the threshold at the property line, so.
Yeah, the sound tends to be directional, and if I look at your diagram and I look at the photo on the top of page 2, it seems to me as if the speaker is projecting eastward toward the gas station. If I look at the diagram that you have with the proposed speaker, it looks like that speaker is projecting southwest. In other words, it's headed toward the corner. What I would like to know is why don't you put the new proposed speaker in the same location on the opposite side, so the speaker does project toward McDonald's and not toward the neighborhood?
We could probably rotate
I
that.
mean, you follow what I'm saying?
I do.
If you look
I
at
see that
this,
right here.
you actually are now perpendicular with that back wall.
Yeah.
If I look at the diagram you have there, it tends to be kind of catty corner, diagonal. All I'm saying is, if you put it anywhere, I'd put it at the same location on the opposite side so that you and McDonald's will compete with each other and they don't have any complaint on the inside.
Yeah, I think we could do that. And actually, the readings were taken with this configuration.
Yeah.
So either or, I mean, I don't want to speak for the sound guy, but I think we're fine, but we can rotate that.
Does that make sense to everybody else?
As long as the queuing can be accommodated.
Doesn't this alleviate doesn't this move, then I'll wait till the traffic guy testifies, but it seems to me, the problem with the queuing now is everybody's waiting to order, and this way there's spaces to wait after you order that will alleviate some of the queuing problems. Is that true?
Yeah, well, there's no preparation time for a meal.
Exactly, so everybody just backs up waiting to order as opposed to ordering and then having those 5 spots as a holding rather than behind the sign the way it is now.
Yeah, the traffic engineer did a study to address, I asked the question about, will you have a queuing now by moving the board?
Yeah,
Well, right now, the queuing right now is because of the pickup window.
right.
When we move it, I asked the question, I did the study, and the report says that the queuing maximum is 3 or 4 cars, maximum. I'm sure
After ordering or
No,
before
at the
ordering?
menu board.
Before ordering, then,
Yes.
basically.
So
Okay.
You might have a maximum based on other
Okay.
Taco Bells, which I'm sure the traffic engineer will speak of. So that's my concern, doctor, is when you move it out, how's that queuing? affecting the parking spaces.
So that's the other thing.
You solve one problem by creating
Right.
Well, the
another.
other problem, now, the only frame of reference I have is Tim Hortons, which is on the route in Somerville border off of 28, right in the circle. You queue up to order the donuts on one side of the building, and you pick it up on the other, so there's a fairly decent amount of distance. The question, I guess, that has to be answered is how many cars can you accommodate in front of the order window and as far back as 22? Will it take 5 cars, 10 cars? I mean, I know with Tim Hortons, it doesn't take very many because they're backed up onto West End Avenue. But if you've got enough space, it depends on the amount of business you're gonna have at that window.
Right, I mean, the history here, the acoustic engineer did a report, and the traffic engineer did a report, I did a report, and I asked questions about queuing, because I don't think the queuing was adequately addressed in the menu board location. And then I had some questions on acoustic, because it was based on modeling, not on-site data.
Right.
So in response to that, they revised the reports to get some on-site data and to do a queuing analysis based on menu boards that's similar to Taco Bell. That's why you see a few reports here. So they're attempting to address those concerns, Doc, so I'm sure the traffic engineer and acoustic will address this.
Yeah,
Let's hear
well,
that testimony.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that our traffic engineer, as well as our sound consultant and expert, can address a lot of the concerns. Mr. Lieber, are you finished with your testimony, or
Unless you have any questions or concerns, I think we're good. I'll let go anyone.
So with that, I would call Mr. Valari, who's our traffic engineer.
Good evening. Could you spell your name for the record?
Absolutely. For the record, my name is Andrew Valeri, spelled V as in Victor, I-L-L-A-R-I.
Thank you.
And Mr. Valeri, your educational and professional background for the benefit of the board.
Certainly. I am a traffic engineer with the firm Stonefield Engineering and Design. Our office addresses are located at 92 Park Avenue in Rutherford. I received my Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Delaware. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I've been accepted as an expert witness in the field of traffic and transportation engineering from numerous similar land use boards throughout the state. I've also had the opportunity to work on similar fast food drive-through applications, including for similar Taco Bells.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, is it true that your team at Somerville Engineering and Design conducted a study and prepared a memo dated March 28, 2022 to compare the drive-through operations at the Taco Bell site in question to other Taco Bell sites across the state that are owned and operated by the applicant?
That's correct, and I believe that study dated March 28th has been marked as an exhibit.
Correct. Yes, that would be exhibit A7.
So, can you explain to the board the type of study your team did and explain your results to the board?
Sure. The purpose of the application is very simple. The site doesn't presently operate it doesn't operate very well. You heard that from Mr. Lieber. It's one of the lower performing Taco Bell sites, and it's for the exact same reason that Mr. Zinski just mentioned. It's because people cannot place their orders, and once they do, they can't move forward. And it all comes down to the fact that there really is no separation between where you make your order and where you pick up. So what happens today is that once you get to the order location, you make your order, and then you stay in the same position because there's a car in front of you and a car in front of them, and that's where the pickup location is. Typically what you'd like to see at drive-through uses is a distance where you make your order and then you can pull up and wait for your food to get ready. What happens then is the person behind you can then make their order, and inside the store they're processing multiple orders at the exact same time. What happens today, since there's really only 2 spaces from the order location to the pickup, is that they basically can only work on 1 or 2 orders at the exact same time. This is fast food. It's relatively fast, but the idea here is that the staff is most efficient if they're doing 4, 5, 6 at the exact same time as opposed to 1 or 2. So what happens today is that someone eventually pulls forward to the pickup location, they make their transaction, they give their card or pay cash, and then they sit there because the food's not ready. And that's because they've only had, the staff inside has only had a couple of minutes, literally minutes to make the food, and it typically takes a little bit longer than that. So the reason that there's a gap at the prototypical design is because while you're moving forward from position 5, 4, 3, your food's being made, and that just doesn't happen here. So what we did was we identified what presently happens on this site, and we looked at other ones. And this is not, to Mr. Cole's point, it's not necessarily modeling. We went out there and we looked at what happens. There's nothing theoretical about it. It's just what happens. So we looked at the subject site. We also looked at a similar site in Milltown, and on average, it takes twice as long for you to get your transaction done here as it does at a similar store in Milltown. And that's not good. That's why it's not doing so great. So the application proposes to make a whole lot of improvements for efficiencies. It may sound counterintuitive, but we are moving the order location closer to the street. And I know you may be thinking, well, that's going to invite traffic to back up to Route 22, which you never want that to happen. It's not a good idea whatsoever. But what you should also know is that we studied 2 additional locations in March of this year, March of 22. One in Hillsborough and one in Somerset, still very, very close by sites. And we looked at how much queuing do those sites have, and if you focus specifically on the order board, how many cars are waiting after the order board? Basically, in this case, I'll use a laser pointer. The proposed order board is where my pointer is located, in the southwest corner of this facility. And since the existing order board is in the southeast corner, you could have the idea that it's going to be easier for cars to back up into the Route 22 driveway, which we don't want. At both of the sites that we studied, in Hillsborough and Somerset, there was a maximum of 4 vehicles before the order board. So the question becomes, what does 4 vehicles at the order board look like? For the record, this is Exhibit A8, and I have a little bit of arts and crafts project. I have some Post-it notes that are cut by hand, by myself, to approximate the size of a passenger vehicle based on the scale of this drawing, which is 1 to 10 scale. I know you can't see so well from where you may be sitting, so I have the pink color here. The first vehicle would be at the order location. The speaker is just an awning that covers where the driver's side window is, so this is where the first vehicle is. Second vehicle would be located behind them. Third vehicle. And then the fourth vehicle. That's the maximum amount of queuing after the order board that we saw at 2 locations very close by very recently. Now, what stands out is that there's angled parking along the west side of the building that would be blocked during this time. 2 important things to keep in mind. 4 vehicles was the maximum that we saw. We actually typically all saw 2. 2 vehicles doesn't block anything. Now, in the scenario where there are 4 vehicles here, there would be parking blocked along the building. But what's also important to keep in mind is that we did observations of this site the way it operates right now. And it doesn't operate well right now. And what happens is the drive-through queue does extend along that front of the building. We actually observed that during the worst time right now, you could have 13 vehicles in this drive-through queue. And that essentially gets you to the driveway throat as it is. So I know it may sound counterintuitive, but actually moving the order board closer to the street, it's going to improve operations, and the drive-through queue is going to get shorter in the future. And that's the gist of the application. So
Mr. Valari, just a quick question. So you said that the max is 4 cars, but how often does the max occur? Is it common? Is it rare?
It was not common at all. The more standard number to use is an 85th percentile. You want to design for the 85th percentile. You've probably heard that before. 2 cars is the 85th percentile. So it's not impossible that there be 4 cars. Maybe 95th percentile is 3, 100% is 4. So very infrequent threshold.
And you've worked on a number, and excuse me if you already mentioned this, but you've worked on a number of fast food restaurants before. Is it common to have at certain points in time some parking spaces blocked due to queuing, or is this uncommon?
This is very common. It happens today. It happens at this location.
And it happens at a number of other locations?
Yeah, I think it's temporary.
Right.
So, your vehicle may be blocked in your spot. You have to wait a couple of minutes. Hopefully you get some courtesy, let somebody let you out. But it's very standard.
Okay. Thank you.
What I'd like to do real quick, because I think this was a good exhibit that's helpful to the board. Why don't we mark this exhibit A10? I'll just reference it as A10 with the 4 vehicles depicted via post-it, I guess. So we're gonna use it. Just so we can have that.
I do have a question. If you added 2 more cars to the queue, it would still be within your confidence level. In other words, you wouldn't be blocking the Route 22 traffic with 2 more cars, is that correct?
That's correct.
So, I mean, you may see the average is no more than 4, but it could be up to 6, and you still would not be causing any problems with
I don't believe that there would be any issue with Route 22. The average is more like 2 vehicles. The maximum is 4. We didn't see 6. We never saw 6 after the.
Where's the entrance now, according to that diagram?
The entrance to Route 22 is down here. This is
Right,
the curb line
okay,
down
so you've got a fair amount of wiggle room.
here. Probably fit another 4 cars. I've got 4
That's
post-it
fine.
notes. Down somewhere. I put them in a pocket.
I assume those are just standard size cars. There's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
SUVs and there's no tractor trailers allowed on any of those.
Nor
sites
these
anyway.
in there.
Yeah. Get another.
They're not making the
post-it
turn
notes.
around the building anyway,
Yeah.
don't worry. Wouldn't be able to turn that.
I have one.
You're electric.
No, I just wonder whether, maybe for the operator, but I'll ask it. Wasn't this anticipated when the building was laid out? Why wasn't the pickup window put on the north side? I just would have just made more sense. You would have had the whole circumference of the building to stack, and you'd have a pickup window right in front. Would have solved the builder's problem. Now you're trying to shoehorn this in without changing the footprint of the
They don't come
building.
all the way back in front of the building. They go out a different
Yeah,
direction.
it's south. If it functions more efficiently, it's going to be more crowded, and you should create more queuing, so it's sort of chasing the tail here. Kitchens in the back.
Quick question for you. You mentioned, you gave some standard queuing numbers and they were based on these other 2 sites. Your percentiles of expected queuing, was that also based on those 2 sites?
Yes.
Now this site could be entirely different if it was functioning correctly. So those 2 sites may not be what the standard operation of this may be. In other words, if this site were functioning the way it's supposed to function, the queuing line could be longer, especially if you're now all the way around the back of the building for people waiting to order. So what are your expectations based on reality if this building were functioning correctly?
Were the other 2 restaurants successful restaurants?
I know that they do approximately 30% more volume through the
Okay,
drive-thru.
that's what.
So I think I understand the question. Just give me one moment. To give you a frame of reference, a similar site in Milltown on Riders Lane. It has more volume, more hourly volume of traffic through the drive-through, and it had a shorter queue. So we have identified at this site, which doesn't operate very well in terms of total vehicles through the drive-through, and it has a drive-through queue that can get up to 13 vehicles long. There's a site in Milltown with the proper spacing that has more vehicles through the drive-through and a shorter queue. It had a maximum of 8 cars.
Right, that was that initial proposed third party proposal. I get it. I
At the
just-
menu board or at the pickup window when you say
Total.
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 So you're saying that if even if volume were to increase drastically, the fact that the restaurant, the Somerville restaurant can operate much more efficiency would be able to accommodate this increase in volume?
Exactly.
So we've got testimony in the past for these kind of things, like how much time it took from the order to the giving you the amount of your food order. And so I'm trying to, so right now, like what is that number and what is it now? What I'm trying to find.
Right now it's 8 to 9 minutes.
No, but what is, so, and what is the optimum number? It's probably for
The ideal
the ideal
transaction
number
time.
of, like, from when you make your order till you get it, what is what the company relies on to make it a profitable business? What is that number, is what I'm asking. Yes, please do.
It's about 3.2 minutes.
Okay,
The
so,
max.
and that's sort of what that waiting queue is after you order those 5 cars, as you're moving forward, that's gonna be about 3 to 5 minutes.
So what happens is, when you have a menu board on the other side, so as Andrew and Mark mentioned that we have the screens that fill up the order, and we have multiple people working on the lines. So as they have more orders, they can assemble faster and move it faster. Now, currently you only get 1 or 2 orders on the screen. So till that order, the car moves, the new order doesn't come in. So while they are waiting, that backs up. The biggest thing, what I'm requesting the board is that we are in a business of convenience. We are a quick service restaurant. So people don't have time. They want to be in and out, in and out. So the moment they feel that this place is taking forever, first we lost a lot of customers. They're going to either Greenbrook or they're not coming, number one. Number two is that if you see this store performing to my other 7 restaurants, it's much higher time. So in Taco Bell, we have a Zoom timer that compares all my locations, how they are doing trending in terms of the delivery. Another big loss we have today is that besides 70% drive-through business we do, a large portion of Taco Bell is a digital platform today. So you have either people coming and picking up the orders, or we have Uber, Grubhub, DoorDash picking up the orders. Now those drivers come and, it's kind of based on an IP, it's geofence. So when they enter, the order pops up on the screen because you don't want to keep it too long. So when the driver comes in and, now this guy starts preparing it, he doesn't want to wait because he wants to go for that delivery and other whatever.
So do the drivers for Uber and things come through the drive-through, or do they go into to do their pickup?
Now it's mainly the pickup through drive-through. Now, mainly so. But if they see there is a queue and all, they might come in. But the point is, there is a geofence. So obviously the order doesn't start till they really come in. So we are losing that part of business because what they do is they shut off our location. So let's say you are ordering from Bridgewater. Normally it's my location closer by, but they shut it off. So what happens if it goes to the Hillsborough and I'm also easing this store because I'm opening another one in Manville. So, it's a new one. So that might use a little bit pressure over here also.
And while I have you talking, so as you know, the high school gets out for lunch and they can go places for lunch along
Yes.
22. So do most of the high school kids walk into your store, or are they going through the drive-through?
No,
The
the kids walk in.
The kids are walking.
It's
in.
good. Obviously, when COVID was there, it was closed, so they might, decide to pick up through the drive-through. But now they normally they're walking.
Okay.
They walk in.
Yeah, only the seniors pretty much have cars, so it's.
Well, I didn't know whether that would change the way you do your tally, because that's a weird kind of configuration for this particular Taco Bell, to have the high school. But
No, we have a lot of kids coming in. And, yeah.
Well, that drives another question. During those peak times, you have people walking in, which is what we do, or you have driving. Is there enough manpower to handle both the drive-through and the walk-in and the peak times?
Yes.
And would that add to the amount of queuing that you might have, simply because you can't get out in time?
No, if you see our kitchen, we have two sides line. So you have production in between, and you have two lines. So people are working on this side and people are working on this side. So this side caters to the drive-through. This side caters to the dining and digital platform. So it's like both are independent. So no. And this store has got lot many seats. I have never seen ever that it's filled. And especially in today's world now, we have very less people coming in, even for dining. So it's more of pickup and digital, So.
So, Mr. Valari, Mr. Lieber testified that there were 21 spaces on site. Is it your opinion that the 21 spaces on site are more than enough, or adequate?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the application to address some of the potential queuing was proposing employee parking in some of these spaces. And I had a suggestion to maybe reversing the ADA to the furthest 22 from where it stands right now. So the chance of the ADA being blocked would be minimized.
Well, shouldn't it be closest?
Closest.
Closer to 22.
Yeah, you see right now, just moving it down one space.
Yeah, closest to 22, so that's the tail end of the line, yeah.
And make that employee parking.
Right, and then the applicant, in the revised application, it said making some of these park spaces that might be blocked the most employee parking to try to.
And mitigate that issue.
Right.
And we're happy to do that. That's a great solution.
Change the sign.
There was also concerns raised by board members in a report about the Dunkin' Donuts because there was queuing on to shoulder Route 22. And I just wanted to know if in your experience, do you treat a Dunkin' Donuts the same as you would a McDonald's or a Taco Bell? In other words, I know they're both fast food restaurants, but is it fair to compare both of them? Are they different business models? Is the prep time different? If you could answer the question in your experience.
Yeah, it's similar in that they're a fast food user that has a drive-through operation. Difference in terms of what times of day those are busiest, different in terms of how long it takes to prepare an order. I think it's a little bit apples and oranges, actually.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the board's kind of alluding to this. There's a human nature that's outside of our control. During the pandemic, we saw a queuing that happened in 22, and it still happens in Dunkin' Donuts. And we heard testimony here that would not happen.
Yeah.
But things are highly dynamic, and I think we should all acknowledge that. That's my opinion. And in the future, should the board grant approval, I think we should have some language, should this occur, X, Y, and Z occur, to mitigate that situation, because.
Well, how do you mitigate it?
Well, I think Dunkin' Donuts, when we heard them, their menu and what they serve has drastically changed to serving up breakfasts and cooking and heating up and stuff, which slows everything down, which I think is so. Their use almost has changed from coffee and donuts to heating up egg sandwiches and all that stuff, which I think is what's causing. When we approved it, that was not part of the menu items that they had there. So that's part of the problem that Dunkin' has now, I think, because it takes longer to make the orders.
Another way to mitigate that, Jeremy, we go back to the original location.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that, yeah.
Well, I don't see this particular company making those kinds of changes, though.
No, they already serve, they're already
They're
working with the right model,
They're
yeah.
already full service.
They're working with that model, yeah.
There's nothing really they can add.
If I know the Dunkin' that's in question, I gotta be careful with Mr. Cleveland. I know he's
No.
loyal. He's brand loyal. That's like a little bit smaller than what's proposed. I know it's just down the block. The building is actually smaller. So although the queue wraps around three sides of the building, we actually have the same issue with that site. The order menu is in the back of that building, and then there's only, if I remember correctly, 2 or 3 spaces that you pick up. So the same issue happens at that site as what happens now. Completely different scale of sales that they do in the morning and even 7 o'clock, I guess, this week.
Donuts is right
Well,
there.
Yeah, he
It's
walks,
We have one in town.
We
he
can
walks
walk.
to the one in
Yeah,
town.
we walk too. There's no queue.
Yeah, I just think in general, different scales of traffic volumes.
I think in this case also, you have a bypass lane.
Correct.
You don't have that.
Correct.
The bypass would be to bail out and go out the data.
That's right.
And then it's here, if the line's that bad, you could drive around, you could park and walk in if you're consistent on.
Yeah, it's more like Wendy's. This is more like Wendy's model.
So the problem is people don't do that.
I can't see
So,
them waiting in the
22.
drive-through.
Well, they have a front,
It scares me to sit there.
Yeah.
yeah, they have the back and the front, so they could people out.
People don't want to get out of
No, well, that's something else, that's another story.
One thing I was thinking, is difficult to craft a condition. We could say something along the lines of queuing causes a problem in the access lane and backing up on 22, they can come back for us to discuss solutions. I mean, at least that's a possibility. I'm just throwing somewhere out there.
Without having to file a whole new application.
We're open to doing that, of course. We don't, safety is a concern, of course, and we don't want to see any safety issues or anything, any queuing on the shoulder. It creates an unsafe condition, so.
Yeah, what they would do is they would send a letter in asking that the conditions be reviewed by the board. And that's it, if that's not an only application, we'll just go that route.
We appreciate that.
You could also actually put a sign out front, online, park, come inside.
I thought about that too, but that no one's gonna.
Well, put the sign out there, and if you're stuck on Route 22, you've got your hands full.
If you park, you get a 10% discount.
Yeah, see that?
Oh.
Then people.
I don't know how happy.
Then what are you talking about? We're not
Dine.
spots.
Yeah, now we're talking about those 21 spots.
Dining incentive, I like that.
There are definitely creative solutions, like an employee could go out there and at a certain point, if it gets bad, they can say, no more, or you have to park. There can be a sign put in, past this point, you must park. So there's creative solutions out there that if there's a problem, I know the applicant would be willing to work to resolve the problem.
Yeah, I've been at Chick-fil-A's where they literally come up to your car with
Right.
a bike pad and
Yeah,
like,
take
take your
your
order and stuff. So,
Can I add?
there are solutions.
We have a bell, we call it bell hops. So if it really gets busy, they come out with the iPad, take the order and pull the car to,
Yeah,
and they'll bring the
that's
food to
great.
them.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do have bell hops.
Yeah, that's,
And what's going to change, the whole thing is transforming. What's going to change is we are encouraging Taco Bell. They are working on a system. Like you go to Panera Bread, you put in your phone number, it will pull up what you ordered before, what you like. Similarly, Taco Bell is going to encourage more people to order through mobile. So they are ordering ahead of time. So it's like they are not coming and waiting for their food. They are ordering and then picking up and leaving. And we have this bell hops. We have it over this at store. So if it gets busy, they'll come out, take the order like Chick-fil-A you said, and they can move them to the park, and then we'll bring the food to them.
that's great.
Any more questions of Mr. Valari?
I don't think so, let's move along. Thank you.
So clearly, sound and noise concerns exist, so we have Mr. Keefe here. Provide testimony.
Yes, Joseph, Joseph, Keefe, Keef, like Frank, E.
So, Mr. Keefe, wouldn't mind placing on the record your educational and professional background?
Sure. I have a BA in Physics and Music from Duke University. I'm a member of the Acoustical Society of America, the Institute of Noise Control Engineers, and ASTM E33 Committee on Environmental and Building Acoustics. I am an owner and principal at Ostergaard Acoustical Associates in Woodbridge, where I've worked for 18 years, and I previously testified in front of municipal planning boards on issues of noise.
Cool, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And just for the record, so as an expert in, how would you like to qualify?
Acoustics.
So one thing I would like to reiterate to the board is that the applicant commits to comply with all applicable noise codes and regulations, that to the best of our knowledge, that the applicant has never received a noise complaint in the past. And I would just note that there are state and local noise regulations outlined and there's policies outlined to respond to complaints for noise violations, and that the applicant fully pledges to comply with such policies. Do you want to speak about the study, or want to ask?
No, I'll just speak. Mr. Cole, nice to put a face with a name. He's done an excellent job summarizing our study. He did so accurately, and perhaps summarizing the greatest concern, which is, will this thing be quiet enough? And the answer, unquestionably, is yes. So just to very briefly summarize our study, we talked about a bit today about how the loudspeaker is directional, which is true. We talked a bit about how it has the active volume control, which is also true. But if we assume that the loudspeaker is pointed in the worst possible direction, which is at the closest receiver, and if we assume that the active noise control is off, so that the loudspeaker is at its worst or its highest level, and we assume that the sound fence at the rear of the property attenuates only 5 decibels, which is very unlikely given its height and solid construction, then even with all those fairly pessimistic assumptions, the new loudspeaker location that we've seen in Exhibit A8 complies with the 50 decibel nighttime noise limit. And that applies between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. So we call it night, but it really also applies to the early morning operations of the site as well. In reality, the speaker won't be pointed right at everyone's house, and the fence will probably do a lot more than 5 decibels, and the active volume control will limit the output level of the loudspeaker to some degree. It's quite variable given the noise of the traffic on 22, of course. But even if you get very, very pessimistic about all this, we still show compliance.
And is it your testimony that if the speaker box, if it were decided by the board to be moved closer to the pickup window, that the difference in moving it there would be negligible?
Yes, at the proposed location that's part of this application, we have a 29-foot distance to the closest residential property line. The closest you can get it by moving it somewhere along the Ivanhoe frontage would be 28 feet, and there's a negligible difference in sound level between the 28 and 29-foot distances.
So the Taco Bell currently is permitted to open at 5 a.m. So based on the 50 decibel level standard that you just spoke about, isn't it true that the previous board at the previous location, given that they allowed it to be Taco Bell to open at 5 a.m., seems to have approved the noise that we call it the nighttime noise, but what is really in the morning? I don't know if I need to rephrase that question. If that makes sense. The question is, that's important. So the board previously approved and allowed the applicant to operate its restaurant at 5 a.m. Thus, the board had to make a determination that the restaurant was previously operating, if the speaker box was previously operating less than 50 decibels.
Understood. Yes, that's correct. It is also worth noting that there is a little more distance from the old location to the proposed location. It's about 2 decibels worth of level. So even though everything is fine now to our knowledge, we are predicting the worst case to get slightly louder, but not to a degree sufficient to be a code compliance concern.
And your study was performed in accordance with NJAC's regulations 7:29.
Yeah, so that's the New Jersey noise regulation, right?
Right.
So the 50 decibel limit at night is given in there. Somerville has a 50 decibel limit given in their code as well. The NJAC 729 is their sort of procedures are mostly about measuring the violation, and we of course haven't done that. We've gone and measured ambient sound levels and attempted to measure the loudspeaker level in the existing location, but as we described in our report, that was basically impossible because there's so much other noise from Route 22 that although you can hear the loudspeaker, you can't look at a plot of the sound and say that this particular bump is loudspeaker noise. It's just all a mishmash of trucks and cars driving past.
So in your professional opinion, will neighbors notice any difference in noise? Okay. Thank you.
My only comment was, I did the two reviews, just that the acoustic volume controls up to 15 decibels. I suggest that when this is built, we just do the cell measurements. If it's at 15 change or something, we could just lower the 15 and 12 or something, or put a max on it to address the situation.
Well, I wanted to ask a question about that. I understand, if I understand this correctly, the automatic volume control function will take into account the ambient noise and then increase the amplitude of the order taker.
It will actually,
The customer can hear better.
it will
That's what-
decrease from a maximum possible level.
So that the noise will not mask out what the order taker is saying, is that correct?
Right, so what I think is important to realize is that if the active volume control is disabled on the device, it's going to be a lot louder than you need it to be in most cases. So although the active volume control's functionality puts the sound level higher than the ambient, what is the actual outcome of enabling the active volume control is a lower loudspeaker output level than we would get if it was off.
Does that fluctuate if there's a sudden, the truck runs down 22, are you gonna get a sudden burst?
Yes, we would expect that, but again, even if, remember, with active volume control off, the loudspeaker obviously can't make more noise than it is physically capable of as an electroacoustic device. So even in that condition, we meet the code limit.
What's the output of the?
The maximum loudspeaker output is 84 decibels at 1 foot.
84.
Right, now we expect the ambient to fluctuate between 45 and 60 or even 80 for brief
84
moments
SPL,
at 1 foot.
84 decibels.
84 decibels.
Pressure level at 1 foot.
At 1 foot, right?
That's A scale.
Yes.
So that's below what would be required for noise in the factory, for example.
Correct. If you were listening, you know, we're normally listening to the speaker at 3 or 4 feet at typical drive-through level, which would put it down in the high 70s. That's probably, unless there is a truck driving by, quiet or louder than you want it to be for your own personal comfort. So we would expect with active volume control on, it's raising the level of the speaker above the ambient, but it's actually lowering the level of the speaker below what its maximum output capability.
And at the maximum, we're still below the requirements of the town.
We are at the
Right
requirement.
at the right at the limit. Which is what I'm saying, that we should do.
Okay, right. So to address Mr. Cole's concern, you are going to have trouble whether you send my company to do it or you hire someone yourselves or whatever. You're going to have trouble measuring this because A, the ambient level is so high, and B, to do it right, you want to be in the residential property. And that's where there's a big tall wooden fence. And that's where we really care about compliance. And so you're not going to be able to get a good measurement because of those factors, which means we don't have a problem, but it also means that sort of certifying very cleanly by writing a one-page report, the measurement data aren't going to tell you the story you want.
I'm 100% agreeing with you. In McDonald's, we have permission from the residents to grab some great measurements.
Okay.
I agree with you. I'm
So
just
you're,
saying,
Mike, are you saying if the residents complain?
no.
No.
I'm saying,
After we move it, go back.
Speaker was the exact same distance away
Right,
than what it is today. We've done this data before.
okay,
the wall's the same as the one at McDonald's.
okay.
In my opinion, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. He is, or the speaker box is 7 or 8 feet closer, and the data's showing right at the
Right at
limit. But he hasn't done the other side of the wall because for the reasons you just said,
Right.
have access.
Right.
I'm suggesting that we get permission to go across the wall when it's operating and get a number of 48 or something that complies and say, well, the wall does its job. It's 7 feet closer, and the actual measurements comply.
And if the wall doesn't do its job,
then I'm saying then we'll have to do
Pick a
something
wall.
to make it look like.
So, that's a two-part question, right? Or it might be a three-part question. We could certainly measure after the fact. We'll do our best to interpret the results to be meaningful. I think you're gonna wind up measuring traffic noise and you won't hear a loudspeaker. But that is in and of itself a result. So that would be okay.
Your 50 decibel benchmark is at the property level, property line.
At the property line.
You're not talking about the 1 or 2.
No, but if you measure just on the other side of the fence, the residential side, at the property line, which is where legally we're obligated to meet, you're not gonna hear anything because there's a big tall wall right in front of your head. It's actually louder a little farther from the fence. And then at a certain point, it's a little quieter because you start to get even farther away. So that's why in our report, we evaluated not only the property line, but the actual residential facade. They have an upper story window where the fence is less effective. It's actually quieter because there's a lot more distance there. So the property line location is still the worst case on paper, at least. You're gonna have to remind me.
So,
It was
let's
really
say,
important.
let's say we take some numbers on the other side of the fence and it turns out.
Yes. What happens if it's too loud? Okay. So somebody mentioned before, I don't remember who, maybe the active volume control could be adjusted to +12 or whatever. It's an out of the box thing. I don't think we have any programmable capability over that. The principles of noise control dictate that we have to change one of the three things: the source, the path, or the receiver. You can't change the receiver; they live there. You probably can't change the source. You can change the path. What we'd be looking at, and this is extremely unlikely, is modifying the fence, is making the fence taller, adding some sort of lightweight thing on top of it that could get the job done.
Can't you adjust the speaker so it points more toward the west rather than toward that southwest corner? Because I did mention that before. I said, if you look at this picture, it's actually shooting east, due east. And if you adjust the speaker so it's pointing due west, it's gonna impact McDonald's more than anything else.
To me, where it is controls where it needs to face, right? We have a radius in the road and it needs, you can't pull up and have the speaker out of your window be pointing towards your, rear tire or something.
No, but
Well, let me ask you this, can you?
If you look at this diagram, the speaker is not pointing toward the wall at all.
You can move the entire thing more towards 22, so
From
that
around
you're
that
coming
curve.
on a bend.
All I'm saying
Right.
is,
So-
take the speaker where it is now on the eastern portion of the building and put it exactly where it would be from the western portion.
The fact is that wherever it is and wherever it points, I testify that we will comply. And so I will defer to the other experts and the operator here to talk about where it should go and where it should
I
point.
said
because-
basically flip it over to the other side of the building.
I just want to clarify that.
What's that?
There's a wall
Yeah.
in between the two properties.
I know that.
Right, that's a
But
good point.
I'm saying, just
So I don't
point
think-
it the
I
same
don't
way,
think it's
that's
like
all.
a competition.
Is
I
there-
think that's what he's saying, is if you moved it around that corner, you're not pointing at that back property. Well, he'd rather it being pointed at McDonald's.
I can chime in here, this is Andrew Blair. It's a bit of a balancing act, right? So you move it one way, if you move the speaker to the right or around the corner, now you're getting where, the queuing becomes a larger issue. You put the speaker further to the left on this plan, the queuing becomes less of an issue, but then the noise becomes more of an issue. So that's essentially how we got to the plan we have now. It's just a balancing act. What matters most? We want cars to back up. We don't think there will now. We want there to be noise. We don't think there will be noise. So this is how we ended up.
Right, I guess the answer to that is, if indeed it exceeds a certain level, then you're gonna have to move the speaker.
Is there anything for speakers like you do in lighting in order to mitigate spillover, a shield or something that put all of the?
That's effectively what the wall is, right? It's physics, right? Once the air starts moving, we can't say, oh, you hit a property line, please stop, right?
Yeah, no, of course.
The sound waves keep going and keep propagating, right? So that's basically the purpose of the sound fence, to contain Taco Bell related noise on the Taco Bell site.
How
Like
about the
your
corners?
testimony is it will comply to the standards of the town.
Yes, right, and I'm suggesting that we just verify that with some testing, and if it doesn't, for whatever reason, then we'll address
Then
it.
we have to
Yeah,
address
if
it.
any testimony was wrong, we'd have to go back and look at it.
In the McDonald's application, the solution was to limit the volume, what you're saying, you're starting 85, McDonald's would cap the maximum volume for a speaker box. That's how it was addressed.
Do you know if we have that capability
I'm sorry.
to limit the output level of the loudspeaker?
As you rightly said, the speaker kind of adjusts based on the overall volume, the ambient sound and the noise. And one thing I would just like to mention to the board, in these 4 years of operations, there has been not a single complaint received by the town as far as our lighting spill or sound pollution is concerned. And we have amazing acoustic wall which is really designed for acoustics. So we take, we agree to it. If there's any issues, we will definitely address it. We feel with our professionals today after the study that we think it won't cause any problem. The last thing we want to do is to hurt any neighbors. We want to be real true partners. We have not received any complaints. We want to continue with that, and we want to be really a neighborhood, location. So yes, we will comply to it if there is any issue.
Okay.
So to clarify, is the agreement that if there's a complaint that testing would be done?
No,
I think testing period.
We'll
When
get
it's
testing.
installed, we'll test it.
We'll test it, and then if it doesn't comply, we'll come up with some solutions.
Okay.
Satisfaction of the board's engineer.
So we would do the testing, prepare a report, submit it to the board, you would review and
Yeah,
hopefully.
that'll reach out to, it'd be a letter report.
Okay.
We don't have, we've done this a number of times. It's just a question of getting, during core sleep hours, getting some data out there during operation of the system.
Right.
To show that it works. Because on top of this, we haven't discussed it yet, but we have the extension of hours of operation. So I'm coming at this from an abundance of caution from the hours perspective. And since sound can really adversely impact residential core hours, I'm just coming from a very.
No, post-construction proof test is something we're familiar with, we've done a number of times. I fully support and encourage it to be done on the residential side of the fence, that's the real answer. If we're gonna bother to, hike out there at 2 in the morning, we may as well do it right.
Okay, Mike, is there anything else in your report that you need to cover?
Just from the board, how the testing on the hours, the extension of the hours.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
I
all.
think we covered
I
everything
mean,
else.
yeah, just this,
Yeah, I think in the report, we've covered, I mean, there's some underlying things, but with the acoustic engineers saying, the signage we're clear on. Yes, the signage, I think in Mark's email, that I think the board has a copy of, maybe they don't. There's an email when he defines it, and it's a couple of inches of signs with thin letters on top of the canopies and the 2 entrances as being proposed. I didn't spend a lot of time on that because, in my opinion, it's de minimis.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
We
So
already approved it.
I'm marking it, it's a variance
Yeah.
because of the overall size.
But we approved that variance.
That's why I thought. we
I just
already-
want to know if we're going to approve another variance, what is the exact amount?
That's why I asked the question.
The exact amount is, I'll go with what Mark has said, I agree with that on what the variance.
2 inches tall.
He's saying 10 square feet overall for the actually letters, and the symbol, Taco Bell symbol is not changing, so it's actually 11.
Okay, that's fine.
Just want to be clear, technically correct, I'm not an engineer.
Okay.
Just want that on the record, right? You said I was an acoustic engineer, I'm an acoustical consultant. Okay. Done with the noise, it sounds like?
One thing I just wanted to add to the hours, we close the dining at 11. So, it will just be the drive-through only that will be open. Dining.
Mr. Mehta said that the dining room closes at 11, so the only part of the restaurant that will be open and operating past midnight is the drive-through operation.
Just a drive.
okay, you will provide testimony.
So I know we want to move things along. I would just ask for Mr. Mehta if he could have the chance to testify as to the importance as to why he believes that the hours of operation should be extended. And then we would conclude our testimony this evening with planning testimony for variance relief needed. And should be hopefully quick. So, Mr. Mehta?
Yeah. So So we run and operate another 7 Taco Bells. We have another 6 under construction. And comparing my other Taco Bells, we do extremely well during the late night hours. We cater to a lot of people who are leaving the work and grabbing the food while going home. During the summer, we have a lot of young kids that are coming and picking up Taco Bell. So we are losing that important business hour that is really hurting our sales. We have it in East Brunswick, we have Milltown, we have other locations which is South Brunswick we open. So when we compare to that, our sales performance is about 75% of all other locations. So our request is that Taco Bell as a food offering, they are significant in that between midnight and 2:30. So it will really financially help us, if that hours are granted. And we have an area where there are other restaurants which are open till late. So, like we have Buffalo Wild Wings, so they can grab the food while going from there, having a couple of games. So we want to cater that, and that will really help our business. So our request is that we will make absolutely commit to the town that if there is any issues or anything, we will address it right away. We had so far we have no complaints from neighbors as far as any sound or light pollutions are concerned, and we have kept the property immaculate.
I had a couple of questions. So you spoke about Buffalo Wild Wings. Are there other fast food restaurants close by that are open late night?
Yes, Wendy's now is open up till 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. Buffalo Wild Wings in the weekends is open up till 2 a.m. in the morning. You have TGI Friday that is open late. You have Applebee's that is open till late. So we have a few restaurants that are open past midnight in the area.
And so I just wanted to clarify. So you have seven other locations.
Yes.
And are all of them open past 2 a.m.?
Yes. In summer we go up to 3 a.m. in the morning. In winter it's 2:30 a.m. in the morning. We are open.
Okay. And just so the board can have some history on the site. So it's my understanding that the site used to be occupied by a Red Tower diner and restaurant. Is that correct?
Yes. Prior to our use, it was Red Tower diner.
And so can you say that again? So it was prior to the
prior to we purchased it, it was Red Tower diner. Yeah.
And how long was that restaurant open for?
24 hours.
24 hours. Okay. Are there any questions from members?
What time is McDonald's open? That's what I'm.
Midnight.
I'll let you ask.
Midnight, right? Is it midnight?
It's
I think
midnight?
we had it at midnight.
I think that I just want to point out a couple of things. First of all, Red Tower, while it was open 24 hours, did not have the drive-through.
Correct.
And Buffalo Wild Wings and Wendy's and KFC are in Bridgewater.
Absolutely.
And they don't back onto residences.
Well, they do, but
No, they don't. They don't. There's that street that goes behind them.
The overpass street.
They don't back onto backyards.
where's that,
It's that, when you go
There's
to
a-
Northbridge,
right,
it's
back onto
the
the
dump,
street.
there's the exit.
there's a road there, but.
Yeah, that's, it's not directly attached like it is with the garbage.
Mr. Namato, just to clarify one thing, that the borough's ordinance, the dining room operation, so indoor dining, is actually more restrictive than drive-through operations. So while it's important to recognize that a drive-through is obviously different than a dine-in operation, the borough has distinguished between the two and has been more restrictive in dine-in restaurants near residential properties than drive-through. I just wanted to make that distinction.
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with it, and I think that in Mike's report, he discusses the C1 and C2 businesses, and I think we need to approach it from that perspective and provide some testimony.
Mike, the current 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. within 200 feet of residence. Is that a local ordinance? Is it a state ordinance?
No, that was ours.
That's
That's ours.
And do you know historically what we modeled that ordinance on? Was that just individual to us, or did we pull upon existing, Brendan might know, pull upon what was in the neighborhood? Because drive-ups only occurred in our.
I think what happened was McDonald's came around and there's a residential concern. I think the original resolution approval was at 11 p.m.
That was late enough.
With the subject saying, if you're a good neighbor, you can come back, the board, you get extended, and they came back and extended midnight. The board is, in my opinion, has approached this that if it's operating, it's working, that they would consider this, just given the track record. Being the residents there, that are getting complaints or trash or loitering, whatever it is, that with that kind of data, the board may not be receptive to it.
Yeah, the track record speaks for itself. The fact that it opens at 5 a.m., the fact that it's been extended to 12 already we would hope would demonstrate to the board that the business is operating appropriately and that the site is conducive to late night operations.
And those neighbors were noticed for this meeting.
200-foot notice.
Mr. Matt, is there anything that you'd like to?
Anybody else have any questions?
I share to some extent your hesitancy, Barney, but if, and again, this has been noticed and I'm sure the neighbors are well aware of this application. I was expecting, quite frankly, somewhat of a turnout just based on our history with McDonald's. Yeah. Some of us remember that was not fast food. That was a quite laborious 6 months, I believe, of hearings. And there was a good turnout from the public, which included, I think, Mike, you taking sound readings across the street.
We did that because I think it was the Boston market prior to the Boston market, and I don't think they were the best residents, so that definitely.
So I was expecting, I came early expecting a good crowd of residents with this, oh my God, 2:30, 11's late enough, this is gonna be a new impact. I could probably give them a little extra time and see how it works, but to go all the way to 2:30, I want to hear more if anyone else wants to chime in.
I was going to ask the same question. Is it possible we can gradually towards that? Let's see how it works with the sound box loop. Let it operate for a while. See how it looks, and then visit.
Well, why can't we give them what they're asking for, and if they get complaints, then we have to roll back the time. I mean, it's have them come back because they're being good. It's penalizing them for working as good neighbors. I'd rather, if there's a complaint and there's so much traffic going through at 2 in the morning with, crazy kids blaring out their music, then they must come back to us and find a solution. And the hours might get rolled back.
Do we have teeth?
We have teeth that have to come back if there's complaints.
I agree with Deirdre. I think that's the prudent thing to do because, I don't know that saying, well, we'll start at 1 o'clock and then, we'll come back to 1:30. I think.
So, but on the other side, are we prepared for McDonald's to come back and say they want at 2:30 as well?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what's gonna happen.
Oh, yeah.
I definitely think there's, I'll go forward to me too.
Before we go too far down this road, I want to hear some planning testimony supporting this variance, because otherwise, we're marching down a road that we're never going to back up from. So, are you prepared to offer that testimony?
Yes.
Good.
Look, I want to talk about the hours because.
Okay, so this is Mark.
One of the things that's changed, since I grew up, which is people don't spend a lot of time cooking. Everybody's working, and I don't know if it's good or anything or a bad thing, but usually when you need food, you just go to the first place you find to get food. But the question with the late night hours is becoming more and more popular because there's an entire segment of the population that frankly is out doing their job every day when we're all in bed. And I think those people kind of get the short end of the stick just because they work the night shift. You know, just to give an example, people working in the hospital, ER doctors, nurses, police getting off their shift, you know, early hours. People working in the front desk in the hotel, you know, their shift ends at midnight, they're out the door. People that work in the Amazon warehouse or any warehouse for that matter. Go to your local ShopRite, your Walmart, there's people that restock the shelves once the store closed. They're out there starting work and we're all getting to bed. You have people that are car service drivers, need a ride to the airport, they're on the road late at night. And then you have the people that work in the airport, people working, you know, the baggage rooms, people that work, you know, outside doing the things at night at the airport that we never see. You have guys working on the highways, they always close lanes at night, they need somewhere to eat also. There's paramedics out on the road, and then there's waiters getting out of other eating establishments in the late hours after the kitchen's cleaned up and they're closed and they go home. And all these people really don't have anywhere to go. So by having hours that exceed midnight, you're providing somewhere for them to eat. And like I know some of these people that would frequent a place like this after midnight. Like I said, there's a whole group of people that we never see that are doing things for all of us after we're dead. I think that they should be granted the right to have somewhere to eat, you know, if they want to go, you know, to use a facility like this. As far as, you know, the planning, this is the exact type of use you would expect to find on a state highway. You know, you think about other fast food types of uses, they're usually not located on roads that are not major roads or county roads or highways. So it's really appropriate for this location. And I understand your comment before about some of the other restaurants are not within the jurisdiction of the borough that may be open 24 hours or, you know, open later at night. And anecdotally, I think that that's more than one. That when you drive down other highways like State Route 18, Route 9, there are uses just like this. Even if they're within 200 feet of a house, which we can hear from the public in a few minutes how they feel about that are open 24 hours a day. You have Wawas that are open 24 hours a day. And really it's for the benefit of this group of the population that should have the ease and necessity to eat just like anyone else.
So, I mean, I just want to point out one quick there on this. The testimony right before this said that there's plenty of other places that are open to get food at the late hours. So I do just want to point that out, that because I am, you know, as Bernie said, I don't want to go down that road, so planning wise, I also don't, you know, I wake up at 3 a.m. every morning, so I'm one of those people. I don't expect to wake up at 3 a.m. and be able to go buy a pair of jeans or, you know, do certain things. So, you know, it's just the fact you work with what you have at those hours. That's my only comment on that.
How many people use the drive-through between 11 and 2 a.m.?
Yeah, we have that information.
At the other location?
So we have 8 different locations here. For example, South Brunswick, which is on Route 1, you have 30 cars between midnight and 2:30. The dining room's closed.
What about the Hills? Do you have the Hillsborough one?
I don't have the Hillsborough one. I have Milltown, which is 15, East Brunswick 29, Orange 38, Irvington 31, then Bayonne 46.
They're more populated.
Jersey City's 35. I mean, it's not a huge volume of traffic. I can understand the board's concern that, you know, it's going to be a constant stream of cars all throughout the late hours, but it's really not. It's a couple cars an hour. But Taco Bell is known for being open late. You know, part of their brand is that they are open late. Not so much a breakfast place, but they're a late place. So they call that really the fourth meal. But there are a whole bunch of people out there that do need to eat at that hour. You know, so it'd be something that, you know, would certainly benefit, you know, to be able to stay open late.
Would you say that the benefit to the late night worker, a resident of Somerville, for example, exceeds the detriment to nearby residents And would you base that based on the limited turnout that Mayor Sullivan?
I do, but I want to speak both ways. Like, I can tell you that, oh, there's absolutely no detriment, don't worry about it, it's fine, but I want to hear from the board what the actual detriment is to being open beyond this.
So I would like to, I think that the noise of the cars kind of idling and waiting in line is one of the concerns. So acoustically, the noise created by a car idling in that line, waiting for their order, does that fit within the 50 decibel, how is that gonna affect the people? I think that's the biggest thing.
No, I think, these are great questions, but I think we should start whether this is a C1 or C2. From what Mark is saying,
C2.
I think you're saying it's a C2. So I'm just gonna read what I said in the report, so you can just answer. What must be shown in the application in C2 is that it relates to a specific piece of property, number one. Number two, that purpose of municipal land use law would be advanced by the deviation from the zoning ordinance requirement. That the variance should be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. And that's four, that the benefits of deviation will substantially outweigh any detriment. And five, that the variance will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zone ordinance. So that's what Mark's going to be covering, those items. And then once he covers those items, I'm sure the board can address the board's questions.
And that's what I'm looking for. Just testimony to support the C2 variance, so that the next guy come along doesn't say, well, you let him have it.
Everybody has to prove that they're entitled to the relief based on the
Right.
variance.
And so he has to talk about this particular Taco Bell,
Correct.
not his other Taco Bells and how well they're doing.
The requested variance is granted runs with the land, the burden is on the applicant demonstrating among other things that be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, which I think the council has done, so that's all this.
So I'm sorry to do this, but is it okay if we take a 5-minute break, just want to regroup and make sure that we're thank you.
We're still streaming live.
Right.
The camera does not pause.
I know you don't have any.
That's all right, bro. Right.
We didn't talk about those guys. Five or 6 meetings until 1 o'clock in the morning. 1 o'clock in the morning. Remember 1 o'clock in the morning.
Too many meetings.
They think they're going too long.
Yeah, I know.
Jason Collins.
Colin did this.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, we are on camera and volume. And you have a microphone in front of you. It does get picked up. Just a, I can't hear you. The microphone amplifies.
No, it doesn't. You just said it.
Jason, you just need like a shirt on.
Okay.
I do. You're 3:30. I hit the gym before, I get in my office and start getting work done, so that I can get out of the meeting all night. Exactly. A lot. That's what I just have. After time these meetings. Yes, I mean, I typically, I get home so that I can be home by 2:50. So I go to school every day. So I spend some time with her every day. And depending on what time meetings start, usually 5 o'clock meetings start somewhere. So.
Yeah. 2 days a week I work now.
I mean, if that's our concern, that's our concern.
A lot of babysitting.
But I'll tell you, like, you know,
You have a resource and another.
okay, where do you want to drive? Back to COVID, Sam.
Bridgewater has developed that we had to discuss.
Yeah.
I'd like to, if the board would indulge me for my soapbox.
Or if you authorize someone to take a look at it.
Send us an email.
It's a report.
Where's that?
The center was for office buildings. Demolish them, put Amazon warehouses.
Oh, no.
So the square footage.
We have no
We have no single family.
You walk around the neighborhood for years.
Only maybe quarter mile from Gas Avenue.
Yeah.
Right now, it's big complex.
Yeah.
It's total, we're saying 321,000 square feet off existing. So we'll have to demolish it all, but 37-foot high, prefab Amazon warehouses. One's gonna be 140,000 square feet, and one's 148,000. So it's just 270,000
All
square
from
feet.
22 axis.
All from 22 axis. Yes.
Not coming out of Adamsville, they're not coming out of
All from.
6 years
And the
ago,
county's gonna
we're
allow
good on
it.
6?
The county absolutely
What's your
justification, but it's all.
What's the amount that you're
Well,
allowed
I know, we're all gonna say.
That's disturbing. I got the application, state board, and they're slightly increasing it, it's already very much built out, you know, it's already built. The parking lot is there, so we're keeping all those things outside stored. So it's a slight increase.
From his property.
But they have to hold, but they have to file the regs of holding all the water.
They're doing, they have a massive storm management support. And if you look at geometry, you know, we had that terrible storm. The detention basin and the elementary school fills up, runs across Union Avenue.
Yeah.
The site is still split, so some of that flow is still coming on Union Avenue. But a lot of it's going on Route 22, which is the volume.
Right.
So I'm not gonna say the whole part, you site there is 22, residential area, which is in Bridgewater. There is a divide, you got, it's a 37, it's a big warehouse.
I know. Giant warehouse, so how many people are working?
They have offices there.
So how many employees will be parking in this?
They have a whole employee park.
24 parking. So you're gonna need it.
Their traffic study says it's less traffic than because it's less people than the offices.
Except for the office there.
But we're gonna have a lot more truck traffic.
Yeah,
Okay?
lots of trucks.
This is on the westbound side, pretty much, right?
No,
eastbound.
Our side.
you know what the Eagles is?
Before you get to the BP station.
Before you go to Houlihan's. Right.
Yeah. Where the old
The
hotel
hotel
was.
used to be?
Yes,
Yeah, that whole area.
Well, next to the hotel, near the hotel.
Wait,
It's the
I thought it was
existing
on-
office
I thought it was
complex.
on-
Yes, it's
The
there.
office complex before you get to the empty lot.
Yes.
I don't know, any time to figure out it's going to count.
You mean the big hotel?
No, on 25.
5 minutes.
You make a right off in North Gaston, the gas station.
Yeah.
You have another truck facility or something there.
That's the old man.
The old Mac
Yeah, that's the old Mac
Next to the Mac
Is that good?
Right now,
You're
it's
outside
four
the state?
office buildings.
Sit back off.
Yeah.
Before you get that.
And what is that back up on?
Right, before North Avenue, that's exactly right, sorry. They want to demolish all 4 office buildings, which we recently saw. Demolish all, putting up 2
roughly
Three-story.
speaking, 120,000, 37-foot high, prefab.
So I just want to thank the board members for their patience. So Mr. Lieber, experience as a planner is a bit limited, and we think for the benefit of the board as well as the applicant, it'd be better to come back to somebody who has more experience, more of a track record, giving planning testimony, especially because from our perspective, we think that planning testimony is perhaps difficult for this type of variance relief relative to hours of operation, since C variance is usually based on dimensions, area, setbacks. There is a setback element to it because it's 200 feet. But
I understand, we can defer it.
So, thank you. So,
When's the next meeting?
June 22nd.
What do we have yet?
We have the request for a zone change on the next meeting, right, Tony? That's the air, where is the train station, zone change?
We haven't been that complete.
It's not happened, see.
Oh, okay, so this is the first one.
We have a zone
Zone
change for the next application. It's not an application, it's a request to change the zone.
Put something into a different.
I think we can probably do both.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and, all right, so the hearing tonight, with regard to Sonoma Somerville Real Estate Holdings, Inc., will be adjourned to the June 8th meeting of the board, same time, no additional notice required.
thank you, board members. I appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And, Chairman, allow me, we're just talking about the Center Point Office Plaza, which is on 22 East in Bridgewater. It's over in the MAC, it's the MAC facility, the MAC facility, and we have 4 office buildings, super tall, tremendous parking existing.
Guys, we just have some
They're
more stuff to finish, so
proposing
maybe.
to demolish all 4 office buildings, which total 321,000 square feet, demolish it all, and put 2 warehouses, like Amazon warehouse buildings, that in total are 275,000 square feet. 37-foot prefab, the 37-foot high warehouses. So they're going to be slightly increasing impervious cover, not substantial, but the site's already at 16 acres, but like 13 acres of impervious there already. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of truck traffic coming in and off of 22, because when you get to the site from 22. Somerville was noticed because of the magnitude of the property and the regional center notice. So we have a complete application, which I have reviewed, not in great detail, but the question, the traffic report indicates that there's going to be less traffic. However, obviously, the truck traffic, in my opinion, is going to increase.
It's gonna get, is there a way you can keep it from cutting through some of it, like some
They're
of
not-
the traffic, well,
They can't get to the facility from the side road. They have to come up from 27.
Well,
but they can get from, they can
yeah.
get from 206 to 22 by cutting through Somerville.
Right now,
So
the
that's my
site between
concern.
North Gaston and North Adamsville on the east side, that's what the site is right now
Yeah.
between.
Yeah, but a truck coming down 22 westbound,
Yeah, it has to, yes.
or if they're coming off 287,
So I take it that the board might want to spend
No.
a little more time with this
Well,
application?
the question is,
Given
we
the
voice our
location?
concern.
the 287, they're gonna come down.
Now, if we don't voice our concerns,
Not do anything.
I mean, the concerns, I think, which makes sense is how the cars, or the trucks are going westbound, how are they getting to the eastbound side?
When you're
Right.
coming, when you're
And are they gonna cut through, coming up 206 and coming up from Plumpton
Okay.
area?
So I should do a little write-up,
Somerville,
and
yeah.
the board wants to take a look at this
What
next meeting?
what will happen is they'll go south on Pinder Marion, west on 28, and north on Gaston.
I
That's
think-
exactly what's gonna happen, and for years, we've complained that we don't get notice when we should. Here we've gotten notice,
We've gotten notice.
we really need to look at this, because years ago, we talked about a development that was gonna impact Adamsville Road. It was something on Adamsville in 22.
I think
It's worth
what
it's
we
worth a
should-
discussion.
what we should do is let Mike take a look at it, write a report. It's not, I don't want it to be brain surgery, just,
I'll write a little report, we'll talk about it, the board wants the next meeting. If you agree with the comments, what normally happens is when the board has an application where it feels that there is an impact on Somerville, we generally come up with comments, you approve the language, and then you submit it to Bridgewater for the record. So their planning board can consider the planning board's comments, the Somerville's comments.
Michael, this is planning or zoning with Bridgewater? Is it approved use?
It's planning, I can confirm that. We just got this application last week, Tony?
Yes, we-
It's fresh, it's like we just literally got this thing, so usually we get the applications within 30 days of the hearing. We haven't missed the hearing, is what I'm saying, with Bridgewater. Okay.
It includes a traffic study?
We have a traffic study, stormwater impact, architectural elevations, and obviously the site layout.
Did you know that the Piscataway restricts certain trucks on River Road? Is that something we would be able to consider for Somerville?
Well, based on my brief look, Doctor, the whole site is access to Route 22, which is the DOT. They're not using any side streets at all.
No,
But
they're not.
Can we,
They're
don't
not.
we kind
You're
of
saying on
restrict?
Somerville side.
Yeah,
what
we
I'm saying
restrict
is-
our streets in Somerville to not allow
Well,
certain
right
road
now, we
sizes.
restrict it on Addisville Road.
But can we do it like on Southbridge and those
And
areas
River
that they're gonna
Road
cut through?
has access to 287, but you can't take River Road if you had over 10 tons or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You have to divert over the same.
Let's look at what their traffic people say.
That's good comments on what the mayor says about how this turning. I mean, the concern is not the traffic on 22,
No.
on East, it's how the trucks are gonna get on 22.
From 206.
And whether that's gonna be impacting Somerville's roads, correct?
Yeah,
From
absolutely.
287 northbound,
Yes.
they're gonna have to make a U-turn at
Right.
at Grove Street or at North Ridge.
let's go north of Grove.
So they're gonna have to make that turn around and
Can
come
you
down
email us
to
the
North Ridge,
stuff so
come
we
up to
can
Zare.
take a quick look at it? And if you got.
And you can't
I'll
just
take
stop
it there,
do
too.
that.
What I
Yes.
wanna-
That's a tough,
Yes.
tough maneuver.
Since this is something that the board has great interest in, I'll find out when the date is, that the Bridgewater's gonna hear. I'll come up with a letter report, a map, Jason, and then we can identify what the turnaround, all that stuff's gonna be, that we have.
So I mean, if you're gonna turn around like Grove Street, like that rule, that's ridiculous.
That bridge is not gonna handle it.
Right?
That's not gonna work.
No.
Road side.
And coming down, and
Since we have no
south,
public
you can't even
here.
get one.
I'm not gonna open it up to the public, or maybe I will.
Well, it's, there is no, for the record, there is no public here, so there's no reason to open it up.
Motion
I
to
was
adjourn.
Second. Usually.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Hey, all those truckers are
Mike,
supposed to stop.
That's what now we have to see Capitol.